Hello and welcome to Stupid Ancient History with Midgley.
I'm Taylor and our expert, non-expert and special guest James the Science Toolboy.
Hello.
As always, we're wearing togas and today we've been eating far too many sweets, so God only knows what's going to happen.
I don't know what you mean.
Taylor is currently flapping around the room like some kind of deranged hummingbird. But that aside, today we're going to try and look at the Battle of Thermopylae. So previously on Stupid Ancient History, we looked at Xerxes' preparation for this massive invasion of Greece.
Which included building a canal, building a bridge, punishing the sea, and building another bridge because the first one went wrong.
Standard.
Mm-hmm.
He'd
For the Persians, pretty much,
pretty
yeah.
standard. He'd also amassed an army of all Asia, arguably the biggest army the world had ever seen at this point.
Even though Herodotus' numbers are most likely to be highly exaggerated, along with his dramatic descriptions of crispy-haired, leather jacket wearing,
Complicated
helmet wearing people, yes.
Yeah, Greek whimsical descriptions aside, his army crosses the Hellespont and begins the long march through Thrace and Macedonia, using these supply depots as they go along to their way to Greece.
And his navy also avoids any sea monsters on the way, which
Always
is good, yeah.
So what do the Greeks actually do when they find out this massive army's coming for them?
As we've previously mentioned, the Greeks,
But not all of them.
the
Okay.
Greeks who decided not to submit to Xerxes formed the Hellenic League with Sparta at the lead, as they were the biggest military power. So they dispatched an army to the north to a place called Tempe in Macedonia, feeling this would be a good place to hold off the invaders.
So no sooner did they get there than they realised this would be actually a terrible place for a battle. Because even though Tempe has this deep valley which they can blockade, perfect for hoplites, they realised there's another way around which the Persians could use to trap them.
Right,
So
okay.
it's just about the worst place you could want. So the whole army now decide they're going to retreat back to the Isthmus of Corinth, which is just south of Athens, and come up with another plan. Which sucks if you live north of the Isthmus.
I was going to say, where are they approaching from?
The Persians are coming from the north.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, basically the Spartans insist everyone retreats back to the Isthmus of Corinth, which is a tiny little landmass, which is just north of Sparta, south of Athens.
So they're basically leaving Athens to get...
Yeah, pretty much anyone north
Done
of
in.
the Isthmus, sorry lads, you're on your own.
Right.
For now.
So what kind of a plan did they come up with to fight this
Well,
ridiculous force?
well, they come up with a great plan. Like all good Greeks, first they send messengers to consult the oracle at Delphi.
Never goes well, does it? Get a nice straightforward answer out of them.
Well, not really. I mean, the Athenians get 2 prophecies back, which is nice. You know, 2 for the price of
Choice.
1. They get one telling them that they need to pray to the winds, as the winds will be the allies of Greece.
Okay.
And the other is to build wooden walls.
Okay.
We'll come back to those later.
I'd go with the wall one, to be honest. I think just going, we'll leave it to the wind. It's probably not the best forward planning.
No.
Again, wooden walls tend to burn a bit.
I know, but it's better than nothing.
This is true. This is true. So that's the Athenian oracles.
Yeah, so the Spartans, however, have a much more kind of blunt response. In a nutshell, it says, Sparta will fall or a king will die.
Oh, okay.
Not a great choice there.
No. Right, okay, so if everything's going well for them then...
Wooden walls.
But when it says or a king will die, does that not mean either you'll fail or a king of Persia will die?
No,
which means that
it's a
you'll
bit
win?
more clear. It's not like the Croesus oracle that says a great empire will fall. It says Sparta will fall or a king, son of Heracles, will die. Basically saying, King of Sparta, you're boned.
Right, okay. So is being told you're basically going to lose enough to gear them up, or is it like break them and they just give up?
Not quite. So it turns out that the army cannot leave Sparta once again because they're celebrating Carnea.
This happened again.
Yeah.
When was this before?
Marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Spartans again, wasn't it? They were having a
Every
part.
time someone invades Greece, Sparta are celebrating Carnea.
Is this at a set time of year, or they just pick when this happens?
Carnea is at the start of September.
Right, okay.
End of August, start of September, which happily coincides with normal campaigning season. But it's a coincidentally happy thing that...
So this Hellenic alliance,
Yep.
their main military force
Yep.
is on the lash
Yep,
when this huge army is coming for them.
yep. And
Great.
you've got to wait until they've finished.
Great, amazing.
So, even though the army, the full Spartan army, cannot leave Sparta, one of their kings, Leonidas, takes it upon himself to do something about it, clearly worrying that the whole king will die bit. So he can't take his full army, but what he can do is he can take his personal bodyguard of 300 men.
I've heard this before.
It's not a big army to take on Xerxes. Bear in mind, Xerxes' personal bodyguard is 10,000.
The Immortals.
Yeah. So, it's nowhere near enough to fight off Xerxes. So, they set off, march north, and to be fair, they all probably know that they're not coming back.
I'm probably going to chip in here with bits from the film. If it's
Yeah.
nonsense, I apologise.
That's fine.
In that, they do something where they only take people who have sons.
Yeah. So, one thing that is suggested is that all the men who go are survived by living sons.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's because they know they're going to die, or whether it's just that this 300 bodyguards, they are the more experienced troops, the men of a certain age. Your king doesn't want to be hanging around with scrawny little kids straight
Yeah.
out of the agoge. He wants people who've been around and know a bit about scrapping. But yeah, so he heads off with his army of 300 men who are all survived by living sons.
And it's not just the Spartans though, because they're joined by this kind of ragtag band of other Greeks who are also keen to fight.
Is that including the 300 or in addition?
Yeah, so I mean on the screen you've got the breakdown of forces. If you look at it, the 300 Spartans are actually tiny compared to the contribution of other states.
Right, okay.
So they're always put top because a king goes with them. But if you look kind of other Arcadians, there's 1,000 of them. There's 400 Corinthians. There's
Sorry,
1,000
Arcadian
Trojans.
meaning...
It's just a region north of Sparta.
Okay.
So the 300 Spartans who go in are really not a massive
Not
amount.
too many people send less than that.
Well, there's the Locrians.
I was about to say, these people at the bottom who sent 13 people.
They're just the people in society that they don't like. So they're like, you go and fight in this war, you're the troublemakers.
You don't know about these Locrians. These could be like your
the
hardcore...
henchest men ever.
These could be the 13 hardest men in all of Greece, or realistically, Locris is not got a massive population. And the other thing to remember as well, not everyone will have agreed with this Greek decision. It's too easy to say this Greek state supported the Spartans, this Greek state didn't. Because we saw what happened with Eretria when some people in the city decided to open the gates thinking, this will all be fine.
This will be great.
So yeah, they're the forces, and then you can see on the other side you've got the Persian forces.
There's 2.6 million people.
Yeah.
Can I ask, just looking at
Go
the
on.
things, you've got infantry and cavalry and stuff,
Yeah.
but then it says Greek allied troops. Why are some Greeks on the Persian side?
Because the Greeks hate the Greeks more than anyone else. Now, these are the Ionian Greeks, so the Lydians, the Ionians, that whole coastline.
Right, okay, because they're sending like 1/3 people.
Yeah, I mean it was densely populated, but a lot of those we know will have made up kind of the naval force
Right,
because they
okay.
had the ships. So yeah, here they all come off to march against Xerxes' massive army.
So what is their... How are they actually going to fight this army? What is the plan?
So this combined Greek force marched north to a little place just north of Thebes called Thermopylae.
Which means hot gates in Greek.
Why have they gone there?
Well, Thermopylae, it seems, is going to be the best place for this relatively small Greek force to hold off the Persians.
Okay.
It's a narrow pass on the coastline between a mountain and the sea.
Okay. You said when we were talking about the hoplites, they like to wedge themselves in,
Absolutely.
don't
This is prime wedgie territory.
they? Okay.
They're heavily armoured, they can stay in a line, they can form a shield wall. The Persians can't go around them unless they're really good at swimming or good at climbing mountains.
it means as well, doesn't it, that the Persians' kind of huge army can't use, like you're saying, their numbers to their advantage.
Yeah, they're completely pointless.
They're just
They
gonna
only send so many troops in at once.
Just
They'll have to,
funnel them into this little place.
Yeah, they'll have to squeeze into this narrow passage, and there's also the remains of a defensive wall that they can kind of rebuild, maybe use to their advantage as well.
Yeah, the Phocian wall, it needs some work, but it's a wall. So it's already been, the Greeks already knew it as a good place to fight off invaders.
Okay.
Anyway, back to Xerxes. As his army moves south, he sends riders ahead to try and find out what the Greeks are up to. Again, very sensible. And the Persians duly find the Spartans and the others at Thermopylae. But rather than killing them to maintain the element of surprise, the Spartans happily allow them to go about their scouting, spying business.
There's a lot of this letting the scouts off thing going on, isn't there?
Yeah, it's almost probably a bit of a cushy job. It's like, oh no, what if they catch us? Nothing? They'll love bloody go.
Apparently we don't know anything.
No. So when the scouts return, they tell Xerxes what they've seen.
They say, at that moment these happened to be the Spartans, and some of them were stripped for exercise, while others were combing their hair.
Okay.
So
Sounds terrifying.
That's their battle preparation. Oiling each other up, having a run, combing your hair.
Okay.
But it's alright. I mean, Xerxes is equally bemused. He's like, what? Well,
Sounds like they're getting ready for a date. I don't know about a fight.
well, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. These are the Spartans. But yeah, he has no idea what's going on. He at least expected them to be a bit more terrified. So what he does, he calls for this Spartan exile, Demaratus, that guy who helped him become king.
Yeah.
And he asks Demaratus, what are they playing at? We're meant to be at war, and they're doing the nails and sorting the hair out. But Demaratus tells Xerxes,
These men have come to fight us for possession of the pass, and for that struggle they are preparing. It is the custom of the Spartans to pay careful attention to their hair when they are about to risk their lives. But I assure you that if you can defeat these men and the rest of the Spartans who are still at home, there is no other people in the world who will dare to stand firm or lift a hand against you. You will now have to deal with the finest kingdom in Greece and with the bravest men.
Okay.
so the whole kind of combing the hair is kind of their preparation for a glorious death in battle.
Right, okay.
So they want to look good whilst being stabbed to death.
Is it the same adage as you should always have clean underwear on in case you run over by a bus?
Well, I'd have thought clean underwear would be a good idea anyway.
Yeah.
Vehicular death or not.
Is that like matching bra and pants for women? I don't think that applies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so.
In case you get into a fight, have clean pants on.
And comb your hair.
So, not convinced by Demaratus' warning, Xerxes pushes ahead anyway.
I mean, in fairness, there are only a few thousand Greeks after all, less than that were at Marathon, and probably less than the number of people carrying Xerxes' luggage.
That's true.
Yeah. So Xerxes has the idea that when the Greeks catch sight of this immense army, when they see it up close, they'll run off.
It's not an unreasonable thing to
No,
think,
I
to be
think
fair.
that's a perfectly logical thought to have.
He's almost like playing poker. He's thinking if he bets big, they'll buckle and go, yeah, there's too many of them.
What was it, 5,000 to 2.6 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd run away.
My maths isn't great, but
There's a bigger number.
Yeah.
We can confirm that.
So Xerxes then, he turns up with his army and he waits 4 days for the Greeks to run away, thinking they've got to go soon, they're going to get terrified or bored. But by the 5th day he snaps. He's had enough of waiting. He just snaps and flips out, and as Herodotus says,
He was seized with rage and sent forward the Medes and Scythians with orders to take them alive and bring them into his presence. The Medes charged, and in the struggle which ensued many fell, but others took their places, and in spite of terrible losses refused to be beaten off.
Fair enough.
So he snaps and just does exactly what the Greeks want him to do. Right, you guys,
Go
go
in.
and get him. Go on.
How long does, is it Carnea?
Carnea.
How long does that last for? How long does Xerxes have before more Spartans are on the way?
Well, this is one thing that he's clearly got to think about, that it's not just other Spartans coming to reinforce, it could be other Greeks.
Yeah, because when you said 4 days, I was like, oh, how long is this
About a week.
Right.
So
Okay.
he's thinking, he's getting bored, his troops are getting bored, let's do it. And he absolutely sends in the troops. Interestingly, he's that confident, he says, bring them back alive, thinking it's not going to be much of a fight. Unfortunately, what the Medes and the Lydians do bring back is stab wounds. So the battle continues like this for a few days, with Xerxes throwing literally everything he's got at the Greeks bit by bit, because he can't do it all at once. Herodotus says,
The kings and marshals who advanced the attack in full confidence of bringing the business to a quick and easy end. But once engaged, they were no more successful than the Medes had been. All went as before, the two armies fighting in a confined space, the Persians using shorter spears than the Greeks and having no advantage from their numbers.
Okay.
so it's not going well for Xerxes.
No.
I mean, Herodotus also gives us a little insight into how and why the Greeks are able to fend off so many continual attacks.
So Herodotus says, on the Spartan side it was a memorable fight. There were men who understood war pitted against an inexperienced enemy, and amongst the feints they employed was to turn their backs in a body and pretend to be retreating in confusion, whereupon the enemy would pursue them with a great clatter and roar. But the Spartans, just as the Persians were on them, would wheel and face them and inflict in the new struggle innumerable casualties. The Persians had their losses too, but not many. At last the Persians, finding that their assaults upon the pass, whether by divisions or by any other way they could think of, were all useless, broke off the engagement and withdrew.
So again, it's not going well.
No.
The Spartans are well trained, they're skilled, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're just chopping these Persian forces down left, right and centre.
Right, okay.
But then, as a result of all this, we see a common theme emerge with Xerxes.
Xerxes was watching the battle from where he sat, and it is said that in the course of the attacks 3 times, in terror for his army, he leapt to his feet.
Okay.
Why is he not leading him then if he's that bothered?
Because he would be dead.
He seemed distraught by that idea.
Well, I just think he'd be a better leader if he was at the front leading his troops instead of just sat there watching
Yeah,
him.
I mean, arguably, don't forget he was dissuaded from going at all by his allies. But yeah, and
Is this not a bit of like under preparation on their part? Because the he's got this Spartan advisor. Can he not have said they've got bigger spears than you? Get some longer spears.
yeah, you'd have thought, but no. I mean, what you see is it's that flip between the well-prepared Xerxes. He's got his army of all Asia. They're coming to fight the Greeks, but he's not very good under pressure. So when things aren't going well, he kind of panics, leaps to his feet, starts screaming, but doesn't actually help.
Yeah.
So this situation continues.
So what happens next then if this is not going particularly well for the Persians?
So it seems by this point that Xerxes is at a loss as to how to dislodge the Greeks. So the other pressing concern is that as time goes by, his army will be running low on supplies, and more worryingly, the Greeks may soon be reinforced. Also running low on energy, I would think, if we have to keep fighting.
Well, yeah, and also the problem with having an army of 2.5 million men, you've got to feed them.
So luckily though, at this point, Xerxes is approached by a local man called Ephialtes.
And Ephialtes tells Xerxes that there's actually an ancient goat path through the mountains that will bring his forces out nicely behind the Greek defences.
Okay.
Not wanting to look a gift horse in the mouth, there's always that adage about beware the Greeks bearing gifts. Here's a Greek bearing a gift. Xerxes dispatches his immortals up this mountain path.
He sends 10,000 people up a little track.
Sneaking up, behind one bush.
Fair enough.
No one will ever hear them coming or spot them.
Why did this Greek guy go to Xerxes?
Because he offered him money.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, he went wanting money, but also Greeks, they will turn on each other as soon as look at each other. Then they're more likely to hate each other more than whoever's attacking. So,
right.
Why not? He doesn't care if the Spartans die. He's going to be cashing it in.
Where do we know what part of Greece he was from?
He's a local. He's a Locrian.
So clearly the Persians were not as sneaky as they thought they were, because the Greeks actually found out what was happening. What a shocker! That they haven't got away with sneaking yet.
Can you hear something? 10,000.
10,000 Persians coming over a hill. So at this point, the Greek king Leonidas decides to call a meeting of all the combined Greek forces. And knowing that they won't be able to hold off the Persians from both sides, he dismisses all of the Greeks except the Spartans and 400 Thebans who Herodotus claims are there as hostages.
Okay.
Which, whether they are or not, is up for debate. I mean, it seems a bit silly. If you're staying with just 300 men...
Why would you outnumber yourself with hostages?
So it's likely, again, these Thebans, Thebes do Medize, so obviously any member of the Hellenic League, like Herodotus will have been, he's writing in Athens, it's their job to slag off any Medizers. So it may well be that these 400 Thebans were part of Thebes who wanted to fight Persia, but the government said no.
Yeah.
So we've got these 300 Spartans, 400 Thebans facing off against 2 million Persians.
That's ridiculous. Why would you not just keep them there as backup? Why would you send your troops home?
Well, I think they've at this point, I mean, they've believed the oracle. Leonidas is now thinking, yeah, king is going to die. Guess that's me. He's not wanting to sacrifice everyone for this battle. He knows this is not going to be the battle that defeats Xerxes. So the Spartans are quite happy to die in battle because it's what they're raised to do. So he decides they'll stay, they'll make this sacrifice. It'll be a good ideological win for the Greeks. But he says to the others, you may as well just go home. Also, he doesn't necessarily trust whether they'll stay in the right place on the battlefield.
They don't all go though, do they?
No.
So there are some that don't want to miss out on the fun. I've never thought of taking part in a battle where you're probably going to get killed as fun, but there you go. So the Thespians also decide that they are going to stay.
How many are they?
The Thespians, there is... Where are we? 700 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thespians as in people from Thespians,
not actors.
Yeah. Darling, I'm here.
Yeah. So not wanting to miss out, like we say, they're going to stay. So those, along with the other troops, prepare themselves to do what they can to try and fend off Xerxes' army of all Asia. So they move forward from behind the wall onto a small hill and prepare for the worst.
Cool. To die.
Pretty much. So Herodotus really piles on the drama in his description of the battle. It's arguably more drama than history. So he starts by telling us...
Of all the Spartans and Thespians who fought so valiantly, the most signal proof of courage was given by the Spartan Dionysius. It is said that before the battle he was told by a native of Tragus that when the Persians shot their arrows, there were so many of them that they hid the sun. Dionysius, however, quite unmoved by the thought of the strength of the Persian army, merely remarked, "This is pleasant news that the stranger from Tragus brings us. If the Persians hide the sun, we shall have our battle in the shade." That's just positivity, isn't it?
Just quipping away even to the end.
Yeah, I mean, the Spartans are notoriously laconic and they're meant to be witty, but clearly this is most likely a fabrication after the event. It's unlikely someone went, "Oh, cool, we'll fight in the shade." Probably went, "Oh, no." Because this is what we mean by the drama of Herodotus. But then he also describes the nature of what comes next, this Persian assault.
So he says, many of the barbarians fell. Behind them the company commanders plied their whips indiscriminately, driving the men on. Many fell onto the sea and were drowned, and still more were trampled to death by one another. No one could count the number of the dead.
So again, Xerxes is going all in, just throwing troops at these Greeks, hoping to wear them down, and the Greeks, it seems, are still resisting to the last. But in this continuing slaughter, in the final stages of the battle, we know that Leonidas is killed, and the remaining Greeks rally around to protect his body because they don't want it falling in Persian hands. And again, Herodotus tells us,
here they resisted to the last with their swords, if they had them, and if not, with their hands and teeth. Oh my God. Until the Persians, coming on from the front over the ruins of the wall and closing in from behind, finally overwhelmed them with missile weapons.
So it really is a last-ditch battle. I mean, they're biting and scratching. I mean, can you imagine being the Persians? I'm not going in there. Why not? They're biting.
Yeah.
They're biting us.
Do we know, being Persians, I presume that this isn't the first time they've tried bows and arrows?
Oh, no, they'll have used them previously.
Yeah.
But again, it's this...
Smaller force, and they're on both sides. Yeah.
It's harder to hit them as well. They've got these big shields, heavy armour. But yeah, it's almost as well... Fighting with hands and teeth, it's literally where we get the idea of fighting tooth and nail.
Right, okay.
These particularly talking about the Spartans, they will not give up. They would happily bite a chunk out of your leg rather than give up.
Tasty thigh.
Yeah, let's move on from that. So, surrounded on all sides, the Greeks are defeated, but arguably at a significant cost to the Persians. I mean, Xerxes has still got some more men left.
How do we
killed the millions?
I'm about to say, do we know how costly this was for him?
The best description we get is that no one could count the dead.
Right.
There's loads of them. But then we see classic vengeful Persian king style. Xerxes has the body of Leonidas brought to him, where he summarily has the head cut off, so he decapitates the corpse.
Nice.
Lovely, yeah.
Well,
seems a bit like,
overkill.
Insult to injury sort of
It
thing.
is more the insult. It's more the symbol that he's going to give to the rest of Greece. No king is greater than me. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to go to work on you.
Yeah. So Xerxes then prepares to continue his march south in the knowledge that he has defeated what is, according to Herodotus, the greatest warriors in all of Greece. So he's probably feeling pretty good about himself, isn't he?
And he's thinking, next up, Athens. So that's the end of it. That's the Battle of Thermopylae, but it obviously raises a few key questions. I mean, when we look at Xerxes, particularly since we are meant to be looking at the Persian kings, we do see this idea of his military leadership is not necessarily the greatest.
Just send wave after wave of my own men at them.
Just keep going, but it's not working. Keep going, we'll get there. I mean, he's great at organising, and it seems like when things are done how he wants, and he's got time to sit and think about and plan and prepare, he's great. But as we saw with the bridge, he's not very good under pressure.
Is this the normal kind of routine for the king to be in charge? Like, I'm not great at this, I'll delegate to my generals or something.
Usually, yeah. I mean, he's taken Mardonius with him, who is this experienced general, but it seems that in these early stages of the war, Xerxes is quite keen to be seen as the great leader, the guy who's leading the army. But when he comes up to these snagging problems, he doesn't really adapt quite well. He has a little strop, shouts a bit, whips some people, and continues. So again, we're back to this Xerxes sex Rex dilemma. The other thing then is to look at, well, technically the Persians win, but the Greeks also claim it as a victory for themselves.
Yeah, a few thousand of us held off.
Yeah, it's the propaganda victory. It sets a very high bar for anyone else left in Greece, because you can't use the argument of, but I don't really want to fight. It's like, but the Spartans have just lost a king. They've fought happily to the death, partly because they're psychos and do that kind of thing. But it gives them that kind of ideological victory, the great sacrifice, that's then going to rally the rest of the Greeks. So even though Xerxes has won, it's a bit of a hollow victory as well. It's like, you won, did you? With 2.5 million men again. So how many Greeks were you fighting again? Hundreds of that? What's it, 5,000?
5,000.
And also, it's not a real kind of easy, clear-cut victory, is it?
No.
So it shows that there are obviously issues. You can't just rely on manpower to be able to be successful.
Yeah, his great army has actually been stopped. And it's not the end of the campaign. He's been delayed, but he certainly hasn't defeated the Greeks, and it's not like the other Greeks have gone, oh no, well, if that happened, we'd better surrender. God, I don't want that happening to me. So yeah, it's not a clear, easy victory. That it's not the decisive victory he wants, or the great and glorious victory. Effectively, It'd be like me kicking a small child down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Which individually is never done, we can't just point
Yeah,
out.
but it's not exactly fair, is it?
No.
Hmm.
You know, it'd be like organising a boxing match between the world heavyweight boxing champion and some kid in year 7.
Yeah.
It's not hard to work out who's going to win that. But what we should also point out is that the impact on Xerxes' campaign potentially is quite disastrous. He's stopped, he's waited for 5 days. The Greeks at Thermopylae have bought the rest of the Greeks another few days to sort their act out and decide...
Stop partying.
Stop partying, packing carnea. But again, this drain on Xerxes' supply lines is probably going to be really influential, because like I said, 2.5 million men are going to get hungry. And it's not like Greece has got enough food necessarily to feed them, otherwise they'd have a much bigger population. So Xerxes is not off to a great start. So there you have it, a quick look at the Battle of Thermopylae and Xerxes' attempts to defeat the Greeks. We hope this has been useful. Thank you for listening. Leave us a comment below, and until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.